The time is exactly 1400 hours here in Jeddah. And wherever you will be joining us, you are following the 12th meeting of the Roundtable of Financing Water for Development, and we are now starting our third session for the day. And our panelists and the moderator are already here. The theme of our discussion is unlocking capital markets for water, leveraging bond finance to invest in water security. And chairing or moderating this panel is our colleague, Papa C, who is Global Lead Urban Development Specialist here at the Islamic Development Bank, and a colleague that I know is very passionate about water. Am I right to say that water, if it's a human being, is a member of your family? Papa C is going to moderate the session, and I would like to hand over the microphone to him so that he can lead us in this conversation while all our colleagues make their way to the room. Can we give a warm round of applause to Papa C, please? And it's your choice to sit there or to come to the podium.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wa sallallahu wa sallama ala Sayyidina Muhammadin, Nabi, Ummi, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama tasliman. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming back after lunch. So this session about PPP, we will have, I'm going to introduce the panelists. Sophie Tremole, she's been in several panels since this morning. She's the water lead for OECD. We have also Cyril Kourjare, and he is the Vice President Aquafed, but also President Business Development with Suez. We have Sirin Tahiri, Executive Manager, Project Finance from Aqua Power. And then we have Dr. Abdel Sami Felfel, Economic Advisor at the Arab Fund for Economic and Social Development, AFASET. Now, we do have also online our colleague, Svetlana Rashtigenko. She is the Chief of Private Sector Department at the New Development Bank. She is online and she's joining us. Colleague, our world is facing essentially two main threats: food security in one hand and water security in the other hand. Food security is very much dependent on water security. We heard this morning 2.5 billion do not have access to safely managed sanitation around the world. 1 billion people also do not have access to clean and safe drinking water. If you look at ISDB member countries, many of our member countries will not achieve the SDG target, 6.1 target, related to access to clean and safe and affordable water. But also, with regard to the SDG 6.2, which is basically access to safely managed sanitation, not only many will not achieve, but many are off track. Now, against this backdrop, this afternoon, we are going to talk about revisiting public-private partnership, PPP, for water and sanitation, balancing the risk and focusing on results. In an infrastructure-intensive sector, improving access and service quality to meet the SDGs cannot be done without massive investment. Around the world, the developing world, the water sector is chronically underfunded and inefficient. In this context, how can public-private partnership be a mechanism, among others, to help government fund much-needed investment and bring technology and efficiency that can improve the performance and financial sustainability of the water sector? That is one question. How can government turn to PPPs to introduce new technology and innovation, such as in desalination and the reuse of treated sewage effluent? How can utilities draw on specific expertise, such as non-revenue water reduction and pressure management, to bring efficiency and service improvement? How would PPP increase competition and bring down prices by bringing in more local and regional investors? Last but not least, a key challenge in the sustainability of the sector is consumer tariff. I think the colleague from the World Bank mentioned it this morning. Water utilities have difficulty investing in infrastructure and maintaining it when they cannot rely on revenue stream that cover the costs and of operation and investment. So how can PPP help to provide a sustainable revenue stream that allows utilities to carry out business and asset planning? So these are the few questions we are going to discuss. And without further ado, I will invite my colleague Sophie Tremollet to answer the following questions. What conditions are essential to achieve a balanced sharing of risk of reward in PPPs for water, ensuring they deliver policy outcomes while retaining value for money? Sophie, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And sorry, you're seeing me again in a short space of time, but thank you for your attention. So as you mentioned, a key challenge in designing PPP transactions is to balance the risks between private and public sectors so that we can deliver policy outcomes and preserve value for money for the public sector whilst remaining attractive for the private sector. And it's important to identify what are types of contracts that can allow doing this, which is why, as part of the package of information you have received for this roundtable, we've prepared a note that highlighted a few cases. It's not by any means expected to be exhausted, but I highlighted a number of cases from Brazil, from Jordan, from France, where this kind of balance has been struck in a way that seems to us quite positive and therefore could provide inspirations for other PPP transactions. And just to be clear about what we're talking about PPPs in that note, so the type of private sector contracts that are able to attract private sector investments, so either concessions or BOT contracts, which need to be long-term contracts in order to enable the private sector to recoup its investments. So this emphasis on private sector investments is important, but we need to keep it into perspective. We've heard this morning some of the numbers that have been quoted by, based on estimation from the World Bank, that in low and developing countries, low income and developing countries, the investments by the private sector only represent about 2% of actual investments. And that's in a context where we need to triple the amount of investments in order to reach the SDG. But the context and the numbers are actually not that different in OECD countries. So we did an estimate a few years ago where we estimated that EU countries, in order to achieve EU directives, which is what is driving investments in the European Union, needed to increase by about 25% between 2020 and 2030. But yet the private sector accounted for only about 6% of financing. So yes, it's important to discuss this point, but it's not, we shouldn't overstate it and be quite conservative. So why is it that there haven't been, more investments? Is it because of this misallocation of risks in a way? And I think to answer this question, I'd like to also reflect on my own experience. I started getting involved in PPPs in water in the late 90s, early 20,000, where there was a lot of optimism about the role that private sector participation could bring. There were major transactions, concession contracts, which were struck with often quite ambitious coverage targets, for example, with the ambition of improving water services, but also extending services to a great number of people. And these contracts have had some mixed outcomes. So, and that has probably contributed to this perception of risk. We mentioned this morning, that risk is something that can be perceived in different ways. So we had some great successes. We work in the Philippines, for example, as the OECD, and Manila Water, I can say, has been an excellent example of success. Bringing down non-revenue water, for example, from 63% in 1997 to 13% in 2022. So that's a major achievement, especially because the city in that time grew at a very fast pace. and they had to invest to keep up with coverage target. But even in a city, in Manila, in Manila, the other concessionaire had a much more mixed track record. And even though they were effectively being regulated by the same regulator and had similar contracts with different sort of initial status. So I think there were other failures, Buenos Aires comes to mind. I was actually at the time when it failed in 2006, and that was due to a sort of misallocation of risk for foreign exchange. So basically the inability to translate the peso devaluation into tariff hikes in the context of social unrest. The concession in Gabon also failed in 2018, even though it had expanded coverage, etc. So it's important to really bear that in mind. Again, I don't want to start on too negative notes, but it's important we have that in mind, and that probably explains why private investments in water is a small portion of total private investments. So we have figures from the PPI database of the World Bank, and it shows that between 2014 and 2023, investments in water was between 2% and 10% of private investment in infrastructure. So we have a long way to go in order to do that. So to answer your question, how can we do better from a policy perspective, which is what the OECD works on. Obviously, there's the issue of tariff, which is the elephant in the room, because tariffs are often kept below cost for political reasons, and that leads to a limited pipeline of projects. So clearly, where we need to start with, and is to have broader sector reforms to put foundational elements of water services in place, and we need to start with better regulation. We are seeing actually a lot of demand emerging from our countries where we work on national policy dialogue. In Senegal, for example, the decision has been taken to create a water sector regulator that can have sufficient degree of autonomy in order to set tariffs at cost recovering levels. We're doing the same in the Philippines, where, as I mentioned, we've had some good successes, but these successes have been very unequal in Manila, but also outside of Manila in other parts of the country. So now we're working with NEDA and the Department of Water Resources to put in place a single water resource commission that can harmonize conditions for the sector, tariff setting rules, KPIs for performance, etc. But of course, when we talk about regulation and efficiency gains, a question that always comes up as well is that of market structure and market and sector governance. Because what we see too often are very fragmented water sectors. So that makes it hard to bring in any efficient operator, be it public or private. So we are working on this as well, this issue of fragmentation. We got interest in Latvia, for example, to do this type of work in order to identify how effectively water sector provision can be packaged in sizes, in units that can be more efficient and more attractive for the private sector. And there's a very interesting example that we can draw from, in which I was also involved when working at the World Bank, was the case of Benin, where the government effectively decided to package rural water service providers into 4 main areas across the country. And that paved the way for private sector participation, for letting out what in that case was a fermage contract, because there's a lot of subsidies coming from the government, both for rehabilitation of existing assets and for new assets. But that's an essential type of reform that we need to be much more proactive in doing. The second point would be that we need a strong enabling environment for private sector participation, and that goes much beyond water. So that's the investing environment, but also what's happening in agriculture, in industry, to see whether or not we have a solid enough enabling environment. And for that purpose, the OECD developed a scorecard for assessing the enabling environment for investment in water, which is quite a comprehensive scorecard, 780 indicators, but which we are applying, have applied in Asia, in EU, Eastern Area Partnership countries, now currently applying in Senegal or in Uzbekistan. So that provides a framework and a guidance, if you want, for governments in order to understand how they can make their water sector more attractive to private sector participation and guide the types of reforms that they should prioritize, some of which are what I mentioned earlier in terms of aggregation, regulation, and prices. And then my third point would be to say, yes, PPPs are, what we should aim for in terms of investment, but inevitably it's better to build trust and to start with lighter touch type of private sector participation, such as service contracts, such as performance contract, and then going all the way to contracts that are designed so as to achieve public sector outcomes. And in this, you will find in the note that I referenced at the start, some interesting examples. One that I would like to highlight in particular, because it strikes me as a new type of contract that is more in line with policy outcomes, is the contract that was struck between the municipality of Lille in the north of France and Veolia, which emphasizes the need to reduce water consumption. So the concessionaire has some objective to save 65 million cubic meters of water over 10 years, and is penalized if it doesn't. And that's effectively something that goes against the typical type of contract where the private operator is remunerated based on sales going up. So we need to shift the paradigm and move to a system where it's not, by selling more water that a private sector operator can benefit. It's really by putting everything in place so that we can reach water security. So you'll find, this example being documented in the note, other types of examples, such as in India, where, the emphasis is on strengthening the operational performance of wastewater treatment services, or to expand wastewater reuse efficiency and compliance in Jordan. So these are the kind of examples that, we will need to be more creative, more imaginative about defining in a context of growing pressure and growing water-related risks associated with droughts, floods, and pollution.
Thank you, Sophie. This is well appreciated. I think you mentioned the type of contract is important to bring the appetite of the private investors, and I think it also this has been witnessed in several cases around the world. The fact that tariff should be right, this is important, and we mentioned it this morning also. That's because the sustainability of the whole structure has to be in place. The case of Leeds is quite interesting because most of the time a utility or a private investor is in place to increase the capacity, to increase the production. But in this case, they are asking really to reduce the consumption. So I think this is a very interesting case that needs to be documented, and also people can learn from that. Now, without further ado, I will move to my colleague Cyril Courget, and then ask him the following question: how PPP models incentivize public and private stakeholders to achieve operational efficiency and policy outcome related to water security, such as reduction of water losses, long-term network resilience, this is important, long-term network resilience, as well as equitable and affordable access. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And although I've been working for Suez for the last 3 decades, I'm talking to you today as Vice President of AquaFed, which is the Global Federation of Private Water Operators. Very happy to see what Madame Trémollet said before about PPPs. We sometimes or often associate PPP to concessions, which is one of the several models that implies participation of the private sector. And I would say that at AquaFed, we believe that private sector is not the only solution, but that there is no solution without the private sector participation, be it as operator, but also as equipment, solution, financing provider throughout the value chain of water. And let's be clear, water is a common good and essential for social, environmental, health, and economical development. And the global management of water should always be under public control. No doubt about it. Private operators, we are here through public contracts and transparent performance indicators to offer practical, result-oriented solutions where authorities wanting to make the best use of their resources. Back to the subject you were mentioning. During the past 2 days, we were in Riyadh discussing about within the World Water Council about the future of water somehow. And it was mentioned, and I believe that it was also mentioned this morning, that we said water needs money. Of course, water needs money, and PPPs are one of the solutions. But we shall never forget that money needs also water to ensure all economical and societal aspirations. And water needs money today in a very particular context of climate change, where every drop will count. And within the large spectrum of solution, from a full concession to very particular non-revenue water contracts that can be implemented. This is one, every drop counts. And the second one is how do we help preventing the large floods that we have been experiencing over the last years. Of course, we all have in mind what happened in Valencia, Spain, but it was also the case in Pakistan a few weeks back. So it is important to have the public sector presenting their solution in order not to eliminate those floods, but at least to be able to arrange the solution as much as possible. So what have we learned about PPPs throughout the years? And thank you, Madame Trémollet, once again, about the different examples you shown, which were very important. And the failures are linked most of the cases in PPP structure that were not well designed, with no proper allocation of risk. It is clear the political risk remains in the public authority. This is something that is logical. And as private operator, we are ready to take risks, the technical risks, the construction risks, the financing risks, which are under our responsibility. And we need balanced contract. This is very important, balanced contract, because the payback of a PPP is on a long-term basis. And we can also be in a position to accept a mechanism in which there is a kind of profit sharing of the profit that is being made by the public entity. I'd like to mention, and we are here in the Islamic Development Bank home, that DFIs are really needed to secure PPPs implementation. And I will take a simple example of what we did in Tunisia, where the World Bank established a kind of escrow account to finance the investment in assets in order to be able to provide treated water for agriculture, reuse water for agriculture. Some additional elements, I would say. We need strong local governments, clear lines of accountability and decision-making. We need clear and realistic expectations that are communicated to all stakeholders to define a baseline and expected targets. Somehow, we are ready as private operator to take our own part of the risk, which are needed in order to make a global project successful. And we are convinced that when properly established, PPP can be the most affordable global instrument. Some final convictions. In the OECD documents, you mentioned that effective finance mobilization will drive to readiness for project implementation. I would think, why don't we think the way around? Meaning that readiness of project preparation will ease finance mobilization. And project preparation is absolutely key, meaning that we need to involve all the stakeholders since the very early stages in order to be ready to share technically, contractually, financially, to jointly measure the social impact of the project in order to create the basis of a successful agreement. And once again, the DFIs have a clear role to play in order to make that a success. So happy to share more examples about what our companies have been doing in this PPP environment. Thank you very much.
We'll take a few seconds. Yes. Thank you, Cyril. Thank you very much. I think very interesting statement. I like the last one. The readiness of the project proposal will ease the financial mobilization. That's quite important, and especially for us here because we are always keen to promote quality at entry, ensuring that really the project is at the highest quality to ensure the smooth implementation within time and budget. And I think this is something really that is good to hear that as well. The design of the PP structure as well, as you mentioned, this is key, and we take note of that. On the same questions, I will ask Serine Tahiri. Maybe I will just repeat it. How can PPP model incentivize public and private stakeholders to achieve operational efficiency and policy outcome related to water security? Now, you can use your own example based on Aqua Power experience. Thank you.
I don't know if it's working. Hello? Yeah, it's working. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me with you today. So to answer your question, I would say that in the context of water-related PPPs, the key to incentivizing both public and private stakeholders to focus on the operational efficiency and water security outcomes lies, as Mr. Cyril said, on the careful design of the contract structure, but also on the regulatory framework, which is very, very important. So from my experience with Aqua Power working on water projects, especially in KSA and UAE, I can say that the performance-based tariff are an effective way to align incentives between both stakeholders. So by tying the tariff to a clear KPI agreed with the authorities or like with the public sector at a very, very early stage, such as reducing the non-water revenues or the maintaining the system uptimes, help, I would say, push both stakeholders to focus on the long-term efficiency of the plants. And also the private partner becomes accountable not only for building the infrastructure, but also for ensuring its continuous operation over the life of the infrastructure, which is very important. And I can say that this creates a framework where the operational goals has a direct impact on the financial outcomes. which encourage more the, especially the private partner to like invest more on innovative solutions, on technologies that help reduce the water losses and improve the overall efficiency of the plants. Second point that is also very important, and it was also mentioned, is the appropriate risk allocation. So for me, the effective risk allocation is critical for innovation and also for operational efficiency. You know that PPPs works better when the risks are better allocated to the party that is in better position to shoulder them. So for example, the technology, the technical and operational risks can be better, you know, assumed by the private partner. You know, they have enough expertise and innovation to shoulder such risks. And on the other side, the regulatory and policy risks can be assumed by the public stakeholders to ensure, of course, that the project is aligned with the national water security requirements. So we have seen in our project that when we set this clear division of risks between the two parties, this helped, like especially the private developer, to focus on improving the efficiency of the project and ensuring implementing, you know, technologies that reduce the non-water emissions and also improve the network resilience. And this brings me to another third point that is also very important, which is the long-term resilience of the infrastructure. So one of the advantage of PPPs is the focus on the life cycle cost of the projects. And this push both stakeholders to focus, or like to take more, like to give more importance, I would say, to the long-term resilience of the infrastructure. So by considering the overall life cycle of the infrastructure, so construction, operation, maintenance, the private partner becomes accountable for delivering a high quality and durable infrastructure with an objective to reduce the future maintenance and operation costs. And also the nature of the long-term contract also gives enough time to realize, I would say, the benefits from any technology implemented, and in an objective, of course, to reduce the efficiency of the plants. And another point that I want also to mention is the point related to the equitable access to the services. I think one of the essential parts of the PPPs is the focus on having services that are equitably accessed to all population, especially the more vulnerable population. And we have seen from our project that the tariff or the design of tariff is very critical in this regard. So the way the tariff is designed is very critical, and the tariff should be like structured in a way that remain competitive, and like through bidding processes or like effective direct negotiations with the governments to ensure that, you know, all the services remains affordable, and having also like ensuring that there is this balance between having services affordable, but also for the private partner to achieve a certain realistic return. And final points that I want also to mention is the financial innovation. Since I have a financial background, I can say that the PPPs allows also to have access to blended financing, like from public funds, grants, concessional funding, and also private investments. And this helps, I would say, reduce considerably the cost of capital, which makes the tariff more competitive and the projects, you know, more attractive for the wider group of investors. So overall, and to summarize, I can say that to effectively incentivize both public and private stakeholders to focus on the operational efficiency and the water security outcomes, the PPPs needs to be designed with clear performance metrics. Also clear risk allocation between the public and the private sector, having, of course, a balance between the public interests and also the project bankability, and also ensuring the long-term resilience of the infrastructure. So we have seen from our project that frameworks that's like with an objective to align incentives between the two parties, achieve to have services that are affordable and equitably accessed by all like the population. And I can say with this well-structured framework, the PPPs can deliver on the most critical goals of water sustainability and resilience.
Thank you, Cyril. I think there are lots of similarities between what you've mentioned and what Cyril also was saying, especially the risk sharing, ensuring the design at the onset. That's very important. But you mentioned a key thing also is the balancing affordability and the interesting return. That's the
Yes, so I mentioned that the tariff structure is very critical on this one. And we have seen that there are some models that support this. For example, this cross-subsidization models, which cut, I would say, the cost, especially for the lower income population, and which is very important and which has been implemented on many projects and helps, to keep the services affordable while also ensuring that the return on investment is realistic or like acceptable for the wider group of investors.
Thank you ever so much. We'll come back on the second round. Now I would like to bring our colleague who is online, Svetlana Ko. She's the chief of private sector from the New Development Bank. Can you hear us, Svetlana?
Yes, good afternoon.
Excellent. Now, good to have you with us. I would like to give you the floor with the following questions. What are your views on the role that MDBs can play in developing and supporting sustainable PPP model for water, including in supporting policy reform on PPPs?
Thank you so much. So greetings from Shanghai, so where I am currently based. But my experience. Can you hear me well? Okay. And my intervention will be based on two experiences. One from the last addition to the new the multilateral development bank's new development bank, but also my previous work in the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. So addressing your question, so I will say that MDBs, they are very highly supportive to balance the concession and PPP agreements. So usually, the financing is somehow linked to the checking that the contract is balanced. So what MDB could play here, in which areas could play the significant role? I think that three areas which have been mentioned by the previous speakers, they all can be addressed by MDBs. First, I would say is the project preparation. So clearly, all multilateral development banks have their own approach and own funds, either advisory services or grant funds to prepare PPPs. And so this shall be used efficiently by.
Hello, Svetlana?
Yes.
Yeah, we have some technical issues regarding the sound. Can you give us 5 minutes? We move to the next speaker so that our technical team here will try to solve it, because we cannot hear you properly and we need really to get all the message you are conveying.
Sure, I would like to be understood well, so please take time.
Yes, just give us a few minutes and then we come back to you with a better sound so that we can really appreciate what you are saying.
No problem. Technical side.
Okay, please stay with us and we come back to you. Okay, so we are moving to Our next guest, Dr. Abdel Sami. Now, can you give us your thoughts, your insight about the role that PPP can play in developing and supporting sustainable PPP models for water? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, C, and thank you for the Islamic Development Bank and OECD and all the partners for organizing this very important roundtable. And I'm from the Arab Fund. Our mandate is Arab countries, Middle East and North Africa kind of thing. And I'll be speaking from this context. It's FDIs, but with our mandate that is the Arab countries. And as you all know that the water scarcity issue in the region is an existential problem. It is not an abstract thing. We all know the water stress level for most of the world region. And here in the Middle East and North Africa, we have 17 of the poorest water country in the region. And you know the factors, it is the climate worsening, the fiscal constraint, and the surface gaps, and the growing demand. All of the factors are leading into that. And we know that many cities in our region are facing day zero, are facing the Cape Town scenarios in a few years, And we are from the same community. We know the cities by name. Probably wouldn't be proper to mention specifics, but today in the discussions, many groups were talking about only one project in only one country. That is very important to that country. The water issues are very important. And at the Arab Fund, we realize that capital is important, but is not enough. We need a new model, the new model that will need us to collaborate, to risk share, and to build trust. And I think for the development finance institution, they can help in some 4 areas. First one is enhancing the enabling environment. We heard that a few times today. And the PPPs would succeed when the rules are clear and the risks are manageable. These are the most important things for the private sector. And this will include sound policies, transparent procurement, and regulatory systems. The role of the development institution here, they can help governments in 2 things: in the tariff rationalization and in governance strengthening. These 2 things, the tariff and the governance, are politically sensitive, but are economically essential. These things has to be addressed to enable the PPPs. The second area that I think the development finance institution can help with, it's their job, the work they do. It is supporting the structuring and financing resilience PPP models. For the Arab Fund, for example, we are working on blending in getting concessional finance and guarantees and technical assistance bundles of these things, the concessional, the guarantees, and even including some non-concessional part of the funding to fund projects that focus on performance outcomes, especially the one that reduces non-water revenues, improve water, wastewater reuse, and extend access to vulnerable communities. And as said, we are following the same model of the World Bank in Tunisia about what they are doing with the wastewater, and we are collaborating with them, and in Jordan as well. The third area, I think the development finance institution can help is anchoring PPPs in broader regional and institutional reform. PPPs are not only financing vehicles. PPPs should be considered, and this is a very big thing here, as the tool for service delivery reform. The service delivery reform is essential for enabling the PPPs. In a recent water financing platform forum that we had in Kuwait, the discussion was mainly about two major points of views. It is funding or funding more infrastructure or enabling the utility to be financially viable and consumer focused. And many of the experts that they have very long experience, they said it is your most important job is enabling the utilities to be financially viable. This is the long-term goal and the most important thing for the sustainability. It is not just building new infrastructure and getting money to be there. The money has to be well managed. And even one of the proposals was there, just that it was as it was said, if you can enable 100 utility to get credit rating or to be credit worthy, this would be the most effective thing you can do to help private sector and to help PPPs in the region. And I think there is a fourth area that is, it was mentioned and discussed a few times today. It is the early stage risk sharing. And it was mentioned here, and I think it is available at the Arab Fund. We are working on it, and I think most of the development finance institutions are doing it. They have, that is the project preparation facility. The project preparation facility, we offer funding for that, the early stages of the studies and the designs and so on. So let's say $1 million or $2 million for such a study, the initial study for such a project, we can provide that. And then the private sector wouldn't take the risk of carrying that high risk costs. And then this is another way to enable the PPPs and the private sector and to crowd in more private finance to the projects. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abdel Sami. Thank you very much. I think we well noted your statement, especially the one at the end. The project preparation facility is a key because many in our developing countries, they do have projects, they do have proposals, but how to turn it into a bankable project, that's the missing gap. And that's where they need some sort of hand-holding to help them to really put on a table something which is really bankable, like Cyril was saying, and also Sabrin. Now, without further ado, I would like to go back to Svetlana. Svetlana, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear.
Yeah, yes,
Does it
please.
sound better? Okay,
Excellent.
great.
Now the sound is much better. And the floor is yours now. So you please
Yes.
go ahead, and we are all listening, please.
Thank you so much. So
Thank you.
I think that I will just continue from the previous speaker. So the first rule which MDBs shall work is provide this project preparation funds. So all of them have those facilities in different forms, and I think that this is one of the roles. And DB, for example, acknowledge this importance for project preparation for PPPs and moving from public sector only and extended so to that area. The second one, I would say it's about financing. So what shall MDBs do in order to eliminate certain risks, both from the public sector and the private in the PPPs, is to provide and enhance the capacity to provide the local currency finance. Because so the water PPPs, so the tariffs paid in local currency. And so if you enhance and provide so the local currency funding to the concessionaire, so obviously this reduce, at least eliminate one of the risks related to your debt, both from the public sector, who otherwise have to provide potentially provide FX adjustments, and this is not an easy task for the governments, or from the private sector who has to find a way to hedge the loan. So this is the second one. And the third area, so it was mentioned, so obviously some of the multilateral development banks, they have the policy advisory role, not all, but those who has need to play the bigger role in not only structuring the PPPs, but advocating for maybe broader tariff reforms, social safety net modernization, and then in general, I would say the gradual transition in transferring the risks from the, let's say, state-owned water sector to the private. So starting from the commercialization of the sector to the tariff reform and increasing the safety net to maintain affordability. So through introduction of the performance-based contract, maybe with public sector companies, and then only transferring to the concessions and PPPs. So just to demonstrate, these statements. So the last two statements on the local currency financing and the tariffs. I think the both interlink actually, because so the paper which was provided by the OECD for this roundtable, it gives one very good example which demonstrates so how the right tariff system can support the attracting the significant financing for the private sector. It's project in Brazil, Atlas do Rio, you made it one of your anchor presented projects. And to my knowledge, so in that project, so all required funds have been raised in local currency. Part from the local development bank, part came from the multilateral development institutions, but significant part was raised from the local capital markets in form of the debentures or local infrastructure bonds. So what's made the public, so this is eliminate the currency risk for the private sector, but also did not put any obligations on the public side to compensate for any FX adjustments. So what makes, for example, the local capital markets comfortable with that? So I would say that if you look at the, in principle, what is concession? It's a natural monopoly. And it provides a long-term certainty for the private sector in terms of revenues. But with this important caveat that the tariffs shall be right, which have been mentioned, I think, by both Aqua Power and so the other players. So, and we looked at the other concession in Brazil, so where also, so I would say that the certainty for the private sector and financiers have been ensured by so the rebalancing of the tariffs and making so that the concession is very long. I think it's more than 40 years in that case. And but rebalancing of the tariffs happens every 5 years. in order to make the initial so expectations on the return on capital for the private sector the same as it was at the origination of the concession. So including taking into account all the changes which might happen during that time. And so this certainty on the returns, so not only allows the private sector to increase the efficiencies in the operations, reducing so non-revenue water, but also attract the necessary funding from both the local banks, the ventures, and from the multilaterals. I think this is so extremely important in the linkage and the role which multilaterals can play in enhancing the local currency finance for PPPs. And on the last part, so on the tariffs and policy. So this is so the again critical area. So everybody I think agreed, and so the so for example in Kazakhstan, when it's from my previous experience in the EBRD, so there was a set, so the whole let's say financing of the sector, including the water utilities, has been also supported by advisory on the tariff reforms, but not only tariffs per se. So and that was also the how to make these tariffs affordable, because calculation by the consultants demonstrated there should be significant increase in those tariffs. But so the second part is, and this is usually missed by MDBs in their policy dialogue with the governments, is the reforms in the social safety net, because OECD in the Agros-Daria concession example demonstrated that this cross-subsidization through the lower tariffs for low-income population creates the risks, and this is I think obvious. And so the stronger safety nets, which is based on a direct support by the governments of the low-income population, will be more appropriate and important, and support better the involvement of the private sector. I think this is the main role which MDBs shall also work if it's within their mandate. So I think I stop here and happy to answer any questions from.
Thank you, Sledana. Thank you really for your contribution and the time you have taken to come back to us. Thank you. We really appreciate that. Now, right now, according to our program, we should move to the questions and answer session. But just before that, maybe just we go for another round for 1 minute each of you, just to ask you very quick questions based on your own experience. Can you develop on how PPP as a business model has helped advancing innovation in the water industry and promoting efficiency in operation and maintenance of water facilities? So very quickly, maybe I start with you, Sophie. Quickly, sort of innovation that PPP has helped to bring in, and also in terms of efficiency in operation and maintenance. Very quickly, please.
So as I said, I mean, there's a good track record on improving non-revenue water. I think it really, where the innovation has come from is where you have strong KPIs with associated penalties or rewards that can help deliver those. So we have seen, mentioned the case of Manila Water, which has been very effective, which has driven this innovation also in terms of customer management, databases, tracking, reduction of commercial losses. All of these are very effective. I think I'll go over to my colleague at Aquafed, who can tell us more about that.
No, on my side, just an example on what we have been collectively able to achieve in terms of desalinated water in terms of price. The price has been divided by 2 in, let's say, in 10 years, and the consumption of energy divided by 4 into the same period, meaning that innovation and long-term partnership has been somehow a motivation in order to reach such level. Very happy also in mature country to go for a project like the one in Lille, meaning achieving a reduction of global water consumption. I will be a bit more prudent regarding developing countries where we should not, because of that, impose a reduction in terms of development of the countries. And I believe that, as we said before, water is a key element for those development. Yes, to optimize obviously the consumption, reduce non-revenue water, and we have all the technologies in order to be able to reach that, but perhaps not on the same way to reduce the overall quantity of water used in order to leave that quantity for development.
Yeah, for me to answer the question, and also from Aquapower perspective, given that for Aquapower we do also the operation, like we have an affiliate that do the operation, so we are not accountable not only for constructing, I would say, the infrastructure, but also for operating and maintaining it. So this is like an incentive for us to invest on quality upfront and adopt some, technologies such as, smart metering or digital monitoring systems or more energy efficient systems. So all of these technologies are technical upgrades, of course, but they're also financially, I would say, justified. Because that's better efficiency means better availability, reduced costs, and ultimately better return and better return on investment.
Of course, when it comes to this question, the best people to answer is the private sector, because my answer will be about the proven cases from the private sector when the performance-based incentives were used. The private sector were able to bring technologies and to employ them. And in the cases was mentioned, the Viola Lane, that is the technologies about the real-time monitoring system and for leakage detection, digital metering, and energy efficiencies. These technologies were brought in because of that in the PPPs, because of the performance based. Also, in some cases, it was they found that the PPPs contributed into professionalizing the operation and maintenance and opening doors for blended finance. And the most important thing is creating culture of accountability, because in the PPPs, you have your KPIs, that is for the private sector, and you start to implement them for the public sector as well. And you build that culture of accountability for penalties and rewards and as well.
Thank you. I will go back to Svetlana. Svetlana, in 2 minutes, what are your thoughts on innovation and improvements that the PPP has brought into the industry?
So, from the use experience of China here, we visited few PPP projects, and I would say that so I've been struck by the level of innovations. First of all, so the AI is now a reality of the water sector as well. So either through the robots, so with the AI recognition, so installed into their ability. So for monitoring the water treatment plant, so-called smart water treatment plant, or it's drones. So the producer of the drones, the DJI, so they install the AI recognition system on the drones in order to monitor the water systems in the cities to detect so the earlier earlier signs of so the problems. So I think that so the private sector brings all the knowledge from the other technologies into the water sector. So so this is extremely important, and so this is already done and shall be promoted.
Thank you, Svenana. Before I open the floor, just two comments from our colleagues that are online. The first one is Bernard Schollwald. He said, one successful precondition for PPPs, for successful PPPs, is also trust among the partners. So that's, I think that's a very, very valid point, because if we have a contract and there is no trust, I think there will be lots of questions and issues about the contract. The second comments we receive is about sustainable aquaculture is very relevant to PPPs and infrastructure projects, since aquaculture and fisheries are highly connected with clean water resources. It's from Andrea Oliver. Now the floor is open for questions. Yes, please.
Thank you very much. So my name is Moez Alawi. I'm from ICLE, Local Governments for Sustainability. I would like to react to subjects and statements of our esteemed panelists regarding the enabling environment. So this word was repeated several times, and to address issues like legal framework, regulation, accountability. But my feeling is that, of course, all these issues are very important and are prerequisites to successful PPPs and to develop it. But I think something is missing if we look from the public sector perspective, which is enhancing the capacity of public sector officials and managers in charge of PPPs. Because public sector is accustomed to manage public procurement, but not PPPs. PPPs are new for the public managers, so they are not as informed as the multinationals or the banks in terms of concepts like risk sharing, due diligence, SPV. If you ask today someone from water utility, what is an SPV? I'm quite sure that they are not well informed about these concepts. So this is why sometimes you feel that the contracts are not well balanced. There is no will for public sector to develop public-private partnerships. So I think that it's the duty of organization like OECD. So you did a very good job, you and the World Bank, diffusing the culture of the PPPs and supporting governments to develop legal frameworks. So most of the countries today, they have legal frameworks on concessions, PPPs, and so on. But in terms of implementation, there are only a few successful contracts. So I think there's an effort today to work on enhancing the capacities of public sector in this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We take note. Any other question before we give the, any other question from the floor? Maybe we'll try to answer. I don't know who would like to answer his question.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think you're absolutely right that, you know, there is a big issue about the capacity of the public sector to let out contracts, which can be partly overcome when you have PPP units that are operating across multiple sectors, because, you know, sometimes, as we've heard, as I mentioned, the water sector is quite far behind as compared to other sectors such as energy or telecom. So there can be economies of scale of having just single PPP units that can take over. And as the OECD, we would definitely put that forward in terms of what are the needs. We're not a capacity building organization per se. That's not what we do. We are more focused on policy frameworks, helping countries identify where they need to address their policy frameworks, but that could extend to the need for strengthening, of course, capacity. So we're not limited at policy, but we would look at what can they do in order to make it more attractive. But then that's where, you know, it takes a village, right? So that's where other organizations which do capacity building then need to come in. And in fact, we do have partnerships in place. So as you know, we don't work alone as the OECD. So for example, I've mentioned earlier the policy dialogues that we carry out at country level. We do those, for example, in Asia jointly with the Asian Water Council, which does have more of a remit of capacity building. And so it's not in the area of PPPs, but in the area of water systems and, you know, water system technology. We heard a lot about, you know, all the new technologies that can be brought in order to generate efficiency gains there. They could advise and support the setting up of training centers, for example. But it really needs to be identified as a need by the country, and then there's always the issue of like, how is it going to be funded, so that it's not a one-off sort of project-based initiative, but it's something that can be strengthened over time.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? I think on the same topic, PPP also is a process. I think it's important that the country learn how to set up PPP. In many of our member countries, they don't have a PPP law. And I think that's the first starting point. Having a PPP law, having a PPP unit that understands the process of PPP, contract management, having people that can negotiate contract, because everything is within the contract. All these elements are important. And I think maybe at the starting point, they need some hand-holding to be able really to accompany those government officials to really to be able to put in place PPP. Maybe Cyril, you want to add something?
Yes, I will take the example of Uzbekistan as a country, because I believe they have gone through this Sovietic period during a very long time, and they were not naturally prepared for PPPs, I would say. What we have been seeing over the last 5, 7, 10 years is that when a country gets really involved in those PPP, understanding, creating those PPP units, then the PPPs can develop. As Madame Trémollet say, there is something that PPP has proven to work very efficiently in other sectors where we put less, how to say that, less emotion, less heart, like energy, telecom, etc. And it has proven to work. Meaning that it is, yes, it is possible, and let's implement what the basic elements that have proven to work in other sectors so that we can make those PPPs in water a success.
I fully agree with you. And also, I would like to note that, sorry. Yeah, so effectively, I would say the relationship between the private partner and the authorities is key in PPPs, and investing in capacity building and also knowledge transfer is very important to ensure that the public partner also can manage and oversee the infrastructure. And something also to note is that there should be a transparent and direct discussions with the authorities throughout the life of the project to adapt to any change in objectives, change in law that may have an impact on tariff and also on the objectives of two parties.
I think, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this session. I would like to thank all the panelists for coming and joining us on this important session about PPPs. Just one comment I would like to make. It's just that water systems are near to a tipping point. Now is a moment for collaboration and partnership to build a more resilient future for the water system on which all society and business depend. So thank you all, and give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you.